Let's go. Oh my god. Okay. First video, first podcast. This is insane because I mean it's been about 2 months now, and I have been literally trying to get this going. It's a huge part of my journey, huge part of everything else. And trust me, we're gonna come up with a way better introduction than this, just a way better everything than this. But for now, this is more of like the pathway of starting and not worrying about perfection. Just start. That's the most important thing. Get started, right? That's the one thing I'm trying to tell myself. So a little bit of introduction, a little bit of who I am. I am Don Caso. You're new and probably another guy that shouldn't have a mic. If I'm being honest, but no. Your newest podcast host, one of a million other ones out there. But genuinely, I mean, here's the thing: I listen to a lot of podcasts. Right? This is like it's not new. If you know me, you know I'm a podcast type of guy. I'm pretty sure people hate it when they get into a car with me. Like sometimes I don't even want to listen to music. I just put on a podcast, and I'm pretty sure people were like, man, like the other day I was talking to my brother. Actually, sorry, I was driving home with my brother. And we were talking, and I just from nowhere I just put in a podcast because I wanted to listen to a business podcast. Like that's what I like to listen to. And he honestly just put in his earphones, and I felt so bad. I didn't feel bad. I kind of like felt like, man, why are you putting on your headphones? Nah, take it off, man. We're gonna listen to this business podcast, and you're gonna learn something. No, I'm playing. I sound like a dickhead, but no, not at all. But anyways, like I said, my name is Don Caso. This is my podcast, the Thought Space Podcast. It's been a long time coming. There's a lot that has gone into this podcast, and there's a lot that is extremely important about this whole concept and what that looks like for everybody, right? It's absolutely insane to have even made it as far to the point where we can start and we can get this going. I'm super proud of myself, super proud of just how far I have come. I want this podcast to be something that I personally can look forward to, something I can listen to. I know listen to yourself is a little bit of a problem. A lot of people out there typically don't like it, and I feel you genuinely. Sometimes it's something I would avoid too, because sometimes you might just get a little bit cringed out. But if that's the case, well, start doing something better. I don't know. I'm not even going to dive into that. Okay, back to the podcast and what it is. Like I said, so welcome to the Thought Pace. First on. Forgive me. Don't worry. We're going to get professional. With this. Relax. We're getting there. But like I'm saying, welcome to the Thought Space Podcast. Woo! Dramatic effect and whatnot. No. Welcome to the Thought Space. I didn't know it was going to be a mouthful when I was making a name. The name just sounded cool. I'm sorry. All right. That's my little get back to reality. Okay. Welcome to the Thought Space Podcast. Right? What is this podcast going to be? What is the purpose of this podcast? This podcast is honestly grounded in mental fitness, right? That's the main goal of this podcast is mental fitness. That's the main goal of my brand. But at the same time, that's the main goal of this podcast, right? This is where I want to take it upon myself to explore stories, people, creatives, different untold stories of important people in history, people that have done amazing things, people that have failed at amazing things, people that have found a way to make it through amazing things or even the tough times, right? I think in life what we tend to see is mental fitness is this thing that a lot of people typically don't pay attention to, right? But the truth is it's one of those things that it's like you have to have it, especially if you're doing something important. You have to have it, and if you don't have it, let's be honest, there's a couple of things I can say about it, but let's be honest. If you don't have it, the likelihood of you doing something even remotely bigger than who you are or yourself, it's pretty hard, But again, this podcast is not here to really teach people like, oh, hey, this is mental fitness and this is, what you should be doing mentally to become mentally fit. Like, we might touch on that from time to time, right? We might dive into that from time to time. We might do a little bit of the case studies or diving in and whatnot. I think this podcast is just it's the beauty of it, right? It's typically my space to really fully explore what this means for every single person that is just really interested in this topic, in this space, and what this means for them, right? That's one thing. Now, okay, what inspired me? What's my inspiration towards this? I think, for one, I like to consider myself a creative. Crazy word, I know, but I mean, given my line of work and what I do and what I plan on starting in the next 10, 15 years, I would say I'm in a creative field, right? Being a creative it's not easy, right? Because now you're typically not using your physical body. Now, really, what you're using is your mindset. Your mind is your most important asset, and if your mind is not where it needs to be, typically what you tend to see is you're not getting far, right? So as a creative, I mean, it's one thing that I had to always focus on was where I was mentally. Now, luckily for me, and I'm not trying to speak for people out there, but luckily for me, I've never really had the problem of anxiety or depression or major league depression or anything that comes into mental health. That's another thing I want to kind of touch upon is we're not here to talk about mental health. This is not a mental health podcast. We do not do that at all. No, this is a mental fitness podcast, right? I look at mental fitness the same way I look at physical fitness. The only reason you get physically ill is because you're not physically fit. Don't argue with me. Take it up with science, right? It's literally facts. Like with me personally, whenever I get a cold, I typically tend to go run, right? When I run, what typically happens is I start to see my body start to, get a little bit better, like get better, get a little bit more accustomed. The heat is working its way through my bloodstream. We'll get into that. I might just be rambling on right now, but you get what I'm saying, right? Typically when I get ill or when I get sick, I typically just work out, and when I work out or do some sort of physical activity that gets my heart pumping, I start to see myself get a little bit better. I start to see myself get a little bit more just accustomed, just more better and everything. I see it the same way as meant to be mentally fit. When you have a mental illness or a mental sickness or just something along those lines of mental health, it's mostly because you're not mentally fit. You're not truly in the place where you need to be to the point where it feels like, okay, like, man, you know what? Like, I can battle depression, instead of telling yourself I have depression. Maybe change that to I can battle depression, right? This helps you out a lot. It helps everybody out a lot, right? Remember that's one thing like I kind of want to take out of this podcast, at least, is instead of I have depression, how about I can battle depression, right? Let's start with that. What are ways to start battling depression? What are ways to start working our way through all that? What are ways that can really be helpful in doing all of that for yourself, right? Most important thing. It's insane to think about, but it's also as real as it comes, genuinely, and that's one thing. Like I for one, that's what inspired me to even start this, right? It was just making sure that I hold myself accountable, but also building a community around this and what this looks like, right? In terms of something I'm trying to address when it comes to this podcast and mental fitness, I think it's just as simple as people don't talk too much about this. I love the fact that everyone out there right now is super focused on physical fitness and what that looks like and what that means. That's great. I love that. I'm also a physically fit guy. I don't really do much of physical content or fitness content and whatnot. Not really my thing, but I'm also, I work out almost every day, if not except for the weekends, right? I work out almost every day. I always try to make sure everything is great when it comes to my physical body. But most important to me is my mental body, right? My mental fitness. How am I taking care of that? How am I making sure that that is in line, in tune, doing what it needs to do, and just being at, just a great place, right? You get what I'm saying? So my biggest thing is bridging that gap, right? Making mental fitness cool, making it a lifestyle, you know? Hey, let's make it a lifestyle instead of just something that people feel like, oh man, this is too complicated to get into. This is like too much to get into, just, you know, and taking away from, because I feel like a lot of people also are really, which is great. I love it. The concept of wellness and, you know, just wellness retreat. I feel like it's becoming mainstream, which is also really good, but I think for a bad reason. You know, I think it's becoming mainstream, but for a bad reason, right? I think people are looking at it as cool, and don't get me wrong. I also want people to look at mental fitness as cool, but I want people to also prioritize mental fitness. What does that mean for you? How is that important to you? What does it look like to be mentally fit throughout your day? Right, super important, super important, and that's one thing that I definitely want to focus on. Now, of course, like what are we expecting? What are we expecting with this podcast? Right? What am I expecting? I think there's a lot. I think it's going to be, this is like a creative zone for me, right? It'll be super fun to kind of see how I go about, you know, just putting out content here, right? From time, I think as of right now, what we're going to be dealing with is just, like I said, just stories, like just stories. I want to learn so much about people from just back then, like predecessors. I hope I said that word right. But people from back then that have done things that just, I mean, take for instance, look at my mouse, right? If you're just listening to the audio of this, you probably, I'm raising up my mouse right now, right? But look at my mouse. Look at my mouse, right? It's crazy to me that someone invented this. Let's put that in perspective. Someone was created enough to think in his head and come up with the concept of, I'm going to invent this mouse, right? I'm going to invent this mouse. Next story, the next episode coming out after this, we're going to be talking about a really, I feel like it's only right that I start off with this person, because I mean, when we talk about failures and mental fitness and keeping the grind going and keeping it moving, we typically tend to always bring up this person's name. I think it's going to be a great podcast episode. Tune in for that next episode. But yeah, no, I want to dive into stories, right? I want to start diving into past stories, past incidents, past events, different things that have happened throughout history that very much are connected with being mentally fit, or what it means to be mentally fit, or even failures that just, you know, if this person or if this situation just had some sort of tie down to being mentally fit, it would have been a whole different case scenario, right? I feel like, to me, that's just what I think, right? And then over time, of course, I kind of want to make this a more dynamic podcast to where I can sit down with people and just start learning stories. A little bit of one thing I'm going to say, just to kind of throw it out there to the people that are going to be listening to this, a huge podcast that I love, that I have honestly grown accustomed to for the past 5 years of my life, is How I Built This by Guy Raz. I literally have it on my vision board that I'm going to sit down with him and talk to him. Hopefully by the time I get to that point, he's not too old and retired, and, you know, we can kind of just sit it down and, you know, chop it up and talk about everything. But Guy Raz, what his podcast is really just about is just stories of entrepreneurs and just business folks that made things happen, how they made it happen. And one thing that I always see, that I always come across when it comes to this people, is they always have that tendency to be extremely mentally fit. They always do, and it's something that I have just learned and seen and come across from them. It's crazy to me. It's absolutely insane. They always have that tendency to just be always mentally fit and just making sure that they just persevere to it, right? Resilience, emotional intelligence, just being relentless, right? This is another book. So that's another thing I'm going to start recommending a lot and talking about. Is just, you know, different little things. I mean, this is why I love this podcast. There's nothing really scripted here, really. Like, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I'm just coming in here and I'm just talking. But this book I've been reading, and oh man, my phone. I'm using my phone to record. But this book I've been reading, I think, is From Like Great to Relentless or something along those lines. I'll probably get it for you and put it in one of those episodes, but something along those lines, right? From Great to Relentless. Insane book. I love this book. It talks about Michael Jordan. It talks about basketball in general, but Michael Jordan, right? Which is another person we're probably going to talk about in like a different episode. But It talks about being relentless, being the person that you need to be, being the person that just, regardless of what the case might be, you were mentally there to make this shit happen. Whatever the case might be, you were mentally there to make this shit happen, right? That book, honestly, I try to read it at least twice because it's not that long. It's about 7 hours. So I try to read it at least twice a month, right? Just constantly working out. We'll probably break that book down at some point during this podcast and, talk a little bit about Michael Jordan. I think that's another person that, when you think of someone that's mentally fit, someone that has told himself, like, yo, I'm going to make it happen, that guy is the guy, right? That guy is the guy. So, yeah, like I said, there's going to be a lot of documentary, a lot of storytelling. Try to mix it up a little bit. Hopefully by, say, the 50th episode, I might have just gotten down a good format that I want to use for the podcast episodes and what that should look like and what that should feel like. I think it's going to be extremely great. And yeah, I'm just super excited for it. Like I said, mostly topics that we're going to be covering is just mental fitness, creative processes, lessons from the past and present creatives or business people. Or I'm currently just on the outskirts of Austin, so I think Austin is going to be a huge part of this journey. Talking to people in Austin, connecting with people in Austin, and just the beauty about it. And when it comes to episodes, as of right now, just because I kind of want to get a group of things and get into like the flow. One thing I definitely want to try and start doing is on Spotify and YouTube, and I think maybe any other podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts. I want to start posting at least once a week, right? Every Monday, give or take, right? Start posting episodes every Monday on those platforms. And then prioritize distribution or little short form content from episodes to use for TikTok and Instagram and whatnot, Instagram reels and whatnot, or even YouTube shorts, right? Just the content strategy. But most importantly, there are two types of frequent episodes I'm trying to post. The longer episodes where obviously we're trying to we're going to be talking a lot, so man, this episodes might even go up to even an hour, who knows. This is just me talking and me just having conversations, so it's going to be fun. But also I want to try to post something a little bit more shorter, so I'm looking at maybe 5 to 10 minutes they're about, or maybe even shorter. I like to call this the thought minutes, right? Might change the name, who knows, but I like to call this a thought minutes, where I kind of just give like little inputs or dive into a quote for a day, right? My frequency will probably be every day for that. Those shorter episodes, I'll try to make it every Monday to Friday, right? Post this, you can just kind of put something out for people to kind of wake up to and see in the morning and get their day started. I personally would love that. Something I kind of want to look forward to. And then last but not least, I mean, this is like I did kind of explain myself in the beginning of this episode and what that looks like and who I am. You see, the thing about me is I've been through a lot. This podcast is going to be extremely personal because obviously I want people to get personal with me when it comes to this. We're talking about mental fitness, and mental fitness, trust me, it's 90%. There's this quote that I have. Oh my God, it's on my phone. So I need to write all this down and have all these quotes like on hand. But I think the quote is somewhere along the lines of, in this life, you're either at peace or you are trying to find peace, right? There's not, again, the quote might be completely different. Don't, trust me, we will get to that. But it's somewhere along those lines, right? And the truth is, I'm constantly trying to find peace, right? That's just a major thing for me. I mean, I like to use this illustration of jumping off a cliff, right? I jumped off a cliff at a very young age, about 19, super young. Didn't even know what was going on or like what was happening in any way whatsoever, right? But I jumped off that cliff, and I've been flying off that cliff for a long time. The thing about the cliff is, and I like if anyone knows me, they know I always use this anecdote, right, or the storyline for the most part. There are a couple of things that can happen when you jump off that cliff. For me, it's three main things, right? And the first thing is you can attempt to go back up that cliff, but to me, that's impossible. You can't do it. Like, nobody can do that. Like, legit, think of it as jumping off a cliff. You're not doing anything to go up. No way possible, right? The second thing is, while you are flying off that cliff, that the moment that you are from the top to the bottom, you're in that middle. There are a couple of things you can do at that point, right? One of those things is you can legit sit down. Sorry, that was not supposed to be said. One of those things is you can be mid-air, right? The jumping off that cliff, and you can decide, you know what I'm gonna do? Because this is how I think about it in my head. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna build a plane, right? I'm not gonna be worried about, oh my god, how much is it? How bad is the fall gonna be? Or am I gonna fall face flat? Or whatever the case might be. Like, I'm not worried about that, right? Mid-air, I am building a plane, right? To build a plane, you have to start with a blueprint, right? You have to know, okay, what design am I using? Can this actually fly? I might fail a couple times. I might build something like, or maybe a wing, and it might not work out great. But regardless, you have to come up with the blueprint. You have to come up with the design. Once you come up with the design, now you can start building. The thing about the blueprint and the design is, nobody teaches you how to come up with a blueprint. That is the thing about it. So now you are just mid-air trying to figure it out. And that's a beautiful thing, though. It's a beautiful thing, don't get me wrong. But mid-air, you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to come up with a blueprint. You're trying to just decide, oh my god, okay, like, let's put this together, let's put that together, put this together, put that together. And then you keep going, you keep going, because in your head, you're thinking, man, okay, for one, I just need to do it, right? Again, this is where the mentally fit comes in. It's because you're thinking, I just need to do it. That's the resilience. That's the relentlessness, right? I just need to do it. Forget everything else. I just need to do it. I need to make sure it works. So you're sitting there and you're making it work. You're building this plane out. You're tweaking it out. You fail a couple times. It doesn't work a couple times. So you're still falling, and finally, right? I should have probably made this second illustration the third one, but you see why I just said that. But finally, this plane works, right? And that's what I said for the first one, the first part. You're not going to fly back up, because why would you fly back up to something you just jumped off? That's insane. That's insane, right? So instead, what you're going to do is you're going to fly straight. You're going to fly into the horizon. That light that you see down there, the sunlight, right? This becomes your escape, right? This becomes your this is where I'm meant to be, right? This is the point people say I've succeeded, because they fly into that. And the last part is you fall on the ground, but because at the back of your head that you have a plan B, you have something like a bed just waiting for you there. So you've told yourself, man, I jumped, but nothing came out of me jumping. So, I mean, I'm here now, and hey, I mean, what's the point, right? And then you just stay there. There are people like that. There are three types of people, and they're just told you those people. But anyway, that's like a little bit of me, and what my philosophy, and just I'll be sharing a lot of that with you guys. It's a little bit of me, what my philosophy is, and how I feel about that. But anyways, look, this is about to be a great ride. It's about to be an interesting ride. I am super excited. Subscribe, listen to it wherever you listen to it. And give me some suggestions. Honestly, put it in the comments. Whatever you want to do. At maybe in a month, I should have everything fully set up. But give me some suggestions. I'm looking forward to this, and I hope you guys have a great week. All right.